Briterion Bollection is back, bitches. I'm your host. I'm your host, Kevin.
Wake
Here,
up, folks! We're back,
here with
bitches.
my boy Kris. How you doing right now, Kris?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Um, some important sporting events just took place, right?
Yeah.
Your beloved Celtics just lost again, game 2. 91-90. Um, I'll excuse you while you vomit furiously in the corner. Yeah, man. That's the thing. I just came back from something that my niece was doing, a little performance, so I didn't get to see any of it. I just know that they won. Knicks won. Also, Yankees beat the Padres on some last minute heroics. So it's a good night for New York. Um, but yeah, we can talk about that on our Briterion playoff wrap up. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Thanks for joining us today, guys. I just wanted to let you know, please subscribe to our shit on YouTube. Listen to our shit on Spotify. Join the Patreon if you want to see video of this. Thank you guys for getting us to 6,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Wow.
That's what's up.
That's awesome.
That's what's up. Thank you guys. And we're just gonna keep putting out fire podcasts, fire fire movies, fire sports, fire music. You know? Yeah. You're a big Beavis and Butthead guy, right? So speaking of animation, so the movie we're talking about today is a adult animation classic, I would say. It's spurred many sexual awakening, I think, for young men. And that's the 1981 cult animated film Heavy Metal. Woo! I have a lot of fond memories of this. some not alone in my room. Um, but yeah, like as far as for me, I saw this first when I was like in 7th grade. So like me and my friends, we were kind of ahead of the curve as far as anime. We were really, really into anime before it got really big. So we saw like all the classics already. We saw Ninja Scroll, we saw Vampire Hunter D, we saw Akira, we saw Ghost in the Shell, we saw Wicked City, we saw Demon City, Shinjuku. Like we like burnt out all the whole anime section at Blockbuster, basically. So it was like, okay, what else is there? We already saw all the good animes. And then we would always see this heavy metal shit there. We'd always see the box, and there's this hot chick on like a pterodactyl or something flying around, and it was just like heavy metal. Like, should we take a chance and watch this? It was like, well, we were running out of animation options, adult animation options. So yeah, I think we just took the dip into the pool, or we rented heavy metal, and our minds were blown. We're like, oh shit, like this is on par with those, Japanese films. Nudity, violence, freaky aliens shit. We just loved it. We were like, holy shit, this is awesome. And then it was like, oh wow, this has John Candy. He does a voice in this. That's awesome. We were really, really into it. Uh, yeah, loved it. And it was like always a cult film. Like I'm like not everybody knew about it, but those who knew, you're like, oh, have you seen Heavy Metal? And they're like, yeah, dude, that movie's the shit. Um, and then you even saw like he had the poster in Step Brothers. He had the Heavy Metal poster like in the background. Just like totally. Of course, those guys would have that, right? Yeah. So when did you see this? Did you see this in a theater? Were you lucky enough?
No, I think I smuggled it and watched it in my bedroom, like many teenage boys during the time. Had a really hot soundtrack, a lot of great songs on there.
Yeah.
it's like I think I knew about the soundtrack before I knew about the movie, and then I was like, I gotta watch
Right.
the movie. So
Yeah. Has some. I mean, despite it being called heavy metal, so that really comes from. I might end up turning you on to information. Well, I'm sure I'll be showing you information you didn't know. I'm pretty sure. Because so it's called heavy metal, not necessarily because it was like this heavy metal soundtrack, even though they threw some of that stuff in. Um, there's some Sabbath. There's like Iron Maiden or whatever the hell. But then you have Devo. You know what I'm saying? You have some new wave stuff in there too. You have I think Blue Oyster Cult on here.
yeah,
um, Veterans of Psychic Wars. Had some cool
classic
songs
track.
on here.
Yeah,
Um, totally fit the vibe of the movie. And so that's the thing. How we saw this like in seventh grade, and then only later on did I realize it was like something more artsy. I didn't like. I thought it was just like gratuitous nudity and animation. You know what I'm saying? Like, but only later on did I realize it was like some artsy fartsy thing. So it really came out. Well, I mean, so the thing is like 20 years ago, like in '04, that's when I really got, I was really I was really into film, got it really into film. That's when I really got the film bug and got really, into it and trying to look for cult shit, that really turned me on and stuff like that. So that's when I really got into Alejandro Jodorowsky, who did some great films. So those first few that I saw, so El Topo and Holy Mountain, I really got into those. And later on, I saw Santa Sangre. So he's a Chilean filmmaker, but he's done a lot of stuff. He's kind of just like one of the great crazy wild men of art and cinema. He was like a mime in Paris for like 5 years or 10 years or something, and he was just like a kind of a vagabond artist. But then he always wanted to make films, and all his great films he made were in Mexico. Even though he made like quite a few films, he's still alive. All his best ones that he made them all in Mexico. So that was starting with Fando y Lis. He made that film, and it caused a scandal at the Acapulco Film Festival. Like I guess it screened there, and people like started to riot. They like burned down the theater or something like that. Yeah. And then later on, he did El Topo, which ended up being a masterpiece, classic Western, revivalist Western, whatever the hell, revisionist Western, which he called a Eastern, actually, because it was so trippy and stuff. And then Holy Mountain was just off the chain. That just had ill visuals. And, I started watching all these, and then I'm like, shit, he didn't do really that many movies that were really that good. Like, I need more. I need more of my Jodorowsky fix. I was like, what the hell else did he do? And so then I realized, oh, he also did like comics. He also did graphic novels, and I did some research, and I was like, oh shit, like so they used to show his shit in heavy metal in the comic in the magazine. You know what I'm saying? That's the thing. So when I was young and we would go to comics and stuff, well, before it was comics and stuff, it was called Comic Castle. We would go there and we were kids, and we would find we would buy the X-Men stuff. But then there was like like in the theater that you worked at, there was like a porn section, like a comic porn section.
reach up real high for it. You get it?
Yeah. Yeah, there was like a comic porn section that was like curtained off,
Oh
and
wow!
I was a kid, and I was kind of like, "Oh, what's in there? Can we go in there?" And the lady was like, "No, don't go in there." you know? But
That's
then yeah, later on we put two and two together. We're like, "Oh shit, they sell like comic porn in there or something like that." Um, and then that's where I was like, "Oh, heavy metal," and then I was like, "Okay, I guess yeah, this magazine." So they made a movie out of it, and then when I got into Jodorowsky, I was like, "Oh, he did comics too." And they would have some of his comics in heavy metal in the magazine. So, and then later on, only then I realized I was like, oh, like this is actually a French magazine. I didn't realize it was European. Well, now everything made sense. Like all the nudity, all the sexuality. You know what I'm saying? Like now it all made sense. I was like, okay, like yeah. So it's really a French magazine, and it was called Metal Hurlant. That's what it's called. But when they, yeah, exactly. Long live the French.
Thank you,
Yeah,
croissants. Thank you, trance.
yeah, exactly. Um, and thanks for Franck Ribéry too.
Right there.
Yeah. No, but like, yeah, that's. I was like, okay, now it all kind of makes sense. All the nudity and stuff, and the artsiness of it, and yeah. So like, Jodorowsky would do stories because he would be more the writer of the stories, and the artist was the French artist Mobius. He would do the drawings for it, and I was like, okay, now all of this is starting to make sense now, you know. And then I was like, okay, now I don't feel so ashamed loving this now. You know what I'm saying? Like this is great. This is artsy, you know, and that's what made me want to revisit it with you, this film. Yeah, and then I saw that like Ivan Reitman produced it, and John Candy did some voices, and what's his name? Eugene Levy does voices in it and stuff like that. It was like, weird. I mean, even though these guys, when you think about it, they were like part of this whole Canadian comedy movement. You know what I'm saying? Like those are some of the biggest, comedy actors of the '80s. You know what I'm saying? And then Eugene Levy got bigger in the '90s when he did American Pie and shit like that. And then he did Schitt's Creek recently, and he's only gotten bigger as he's gotten older, which is weird. You know what I'm saying? But Candy is a legend. Uncle Buck, planes, trains, automobiles. That's some of your favorite shit, right?
The best movies ever made.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of crazy that he does pretty big voices in this. So yeah, if you haven't seen Heavy Metal, which you should, watch that shit right now before you listen to this. It's an anthology film, like a lot of great films are. Like Tales from the Hood is an anthology film. Four Rooms is an anthology film. It's like a bunch of vignettes kind of sewed together through kind of a main overarching storyline. Um, so let's see here. So the first section is what's it called? It's called Soft Landing, and that's like, I guess that was created by Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien. And so Dan O'Bannon also was part of Jodorowsky's crew when he was going to do Dune, the failed Dune project. So Dan O'Bannon was part of that. And so the title sequence story opens with a space shuttle orbiting the Earth. The bay doors open, releasing a 1960 Corvette. An astronaut seated in the car then begins descending through Earth's atmosphere, landing in a desert canyon. Yeah, yeah, so the movie starts and we see space and we hear this ominous voice speaking, and this green orb comes out of nowhere, and uh, like the guy, he's in his convertible car flying through space, which is pretty cool. It's like gives it this like rock and roll vibe, and the guy comes home to his daughter and tells her he brought her something, and we see the guy take off his helmet, and he looks a lot older and lamer than I thought he would. I thought he'd look a lot
Cool
cooler.
entry. It's such a cool intro.
Yeah, yeah,
Radar
exactly.
Rider blaring in the background, driving his Corv through space.
Yeah,
That's you expect. I don't know.
yeah, like Steve
Never
McQueen or something.
listened. What's the guy from 90210?
Yeah, Dylan McKay.
Expect him to step out.
Yeah, exactly. And then we just see this old, lame-looking dude. You know,
Yeah,
um, kind of a letdown.
yeah.
Yeah, so he opens the container with the green orb, and it just immediately starts to melt her father on sight. He just like disintegrates right before her
I
eyes.
brought home.
Yeah, and she's horrified. Um, and the animation here, like on her face, is she's just like, like, yeah, not the greatest like animated acting, I don't think, but yeah,
She almost looks
yeah,
like possessed a little bit in her. Like,
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah, and she looks like, yeah, it's kind of the animation reminds me of the movie Anastasia that they did in like '96 or '97. I actually saw that in the theaters, which it wasn't that good. I didn't think so. Anyways, so
this would have been
yeah,
better in the theater than Anastasia.
Right. Yeah. So the green orb, after it melts her father, it comes up to her and talks to her, and it goes on to tell her these stories of the orb because it's like the most powerful thing in the universe, supposedly. So, this Veterans of Psychic Wars track plays, and we see some guy and creatures are like robots, like vacuuming like things in the desert or something. So it's like a treasure hunting thing or something like that they're using, and I like how this orb just comes out, and just immediately destroys the shit out of things, like it just the orb comes out and it sees a little girl and it decides to just immediately tell her multiple stories containing extreme violence, extreme sexual acts, and extreme drug use. I love that. This orb doesn't have very good viewer discretion, I must say. Um, so yeah, and yeah, that guy is digging in the desert, and he looks like Abraham Lincoln. He just has the beard, like no mustache. You know what I'm saying? And he has these helpers who are like little brown men helping him out or whatever. Um, it's kind of a nice little allegory, like Abraham Lincoln and his little brown men helping him out. you know, yeah, it's kind of funny. And so it melts him, and then it goes into the story, which I like. I like the title. It's called Harry Canyon. Um, I guess that's the guy's name, but it's like a double entendre, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
because she has a hairy canyon.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, well, try to do a little research on it.
Okay.
So yeah, and so this story, this Harry Canyon story, it is original story by Daniel Goldberg and Len Blum, based on the Long Tomorrow by Mobius. So, I mean, even the animation has Mobius' style of drawing. Like, it's like clean yet kind of like scratchy a little bit. But Mobius is a great artist. If you look up some of his shit, he even dipped his feet in the Marvel universe. You can Google some of his pics. He really liked Silver Surfer because he liked a lot of sci-fi stuff. So he did some cool Silver Surfer drawings, and you can see he did a random Wolverine drawing, random Spider-Man drawing here and there. It's pretty cool. So we fade up, and it's New York in the future, and there's a voiceover of this New York cabbie guy, and he's kind of setting the tone, and he's saying they're even thinking of letting low lives from other planets come here too. Like, he's really showing off his MAGA side there.
Shadowing.
Yeah, exactly. And even the cabbie guy looks really lame. He's this like balding, chubby guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you made the chicks so hot, and you made these guys so fucking ugly. You know what I'm saying? It's a bit of a letdown. Um,
Well, it's relatable for some people. Not me, of course, because I look amazing. But there's a
yeah,
lot
of course
of
not.
nerdy, geeky guys who
Yeah,
would enjoy this. You know.
yeah. This is very much a nerdy writer's fantasy. I think that's partly why this movie isn't as glorified as it should be. Like, it's not as widespread. It's because these ugly guys are ruining the movie.
Didn't ruin my experience. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't paying
Well,
attention
I
to
mean,
that.
they need to sell the hot chicks more on people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So this like punk guy knocks on the cabbie guy's door, and he tells him he wants to go to the UN building, but then he wonders to himself, like, why the hell does this guy want to go to the UN building? Like they turned it into a slum basically, and so he starts driving, and then the punk dude pulls out a gun on him, and he's like, "I'll blow your fucking head off." And the cabbie guy, he has this cool little thing on his gas pedal. He just lifts it up, and he has like a ray gun in the back seat. So he hits that and just melts the punk dude there. He takes his gun and adds it to his glove compartment gun collection that he has.
The guy has a grenade in his dash, his glove.
Yeah, yeah,
Amongst
exactly.
things.
Yeah.
Very
So
effective. Cool.
yeah. So that orb is actually called the Lochnar. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. So the Lochnar is on an exhibition at the museum in New York. But then we see that Abraham Lincoln looking guy dying on the steps of the museum. He's like, oh shit. And then his hot daughter runs out and she's scared and crying. She runs out and finds the cabbie guy. Yep, we're getting there. Finds the cabbie guy and she's like, oh, can you help me? Can you help me? And then this like fat, ugly kingpin looking guy, sees her dad dead and he's like, get the goyle, but he does look a lot like Kingpin from Spider-Man and Punisher, but even uglier than Kingpin, if you can.
It's like a Dick Tracy version of Kingpin.
Yeah, yeah, he's like a Mumbles Kingpin guy,
Folds his skin on his face.
Yeah, yeah, nice Dick Tracy reference. Did you like that movie? Did you see that in the theaters at all?
Please, no. Madonna, yes.
Yeah,
Some
yeah. I mean,
yes.
yeah. I mean, that's when Warren Beatty started to fall off. To say the
Money
least.
grab.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Value.
Yeah. So the ugly Kingpin guy, I guess he's trying to, get a hold of the Lochnar, we can assume. So he goes to she goes to the cabbie and he's like, oh, okay, I'll help you out. Like, I guess you're pretty hot. I'll help you. And he takes her to the police station. And when he walks in, there's some like hookers like talking shit to him. These like, crazy hookers. And the cops are bringing in some alien guy. You can see that they've like arrested him, and he's like, I'm an American citizen. I just lost my papers or something. Yeah, it's pretty funny. And then the cabbie dude, he's like, goddamn illegal aliens. Like, see, he's very MAGA, this guy. He's very Trumpian. So the guy, the cop tells him, he's like, hey, it's going to be $1,000 a day for an investigation, and then we got to do this and we got to do that. And he's like, fuck that shit. I ain't fucking with that. So he just takes her home, and on the soundtrack, it starts playing Open Arms by Journey, which is pretty lame, actually. That's probably the one song I would rip out from this. It's like, ding, 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 ding. And I was like, oh my god. It's pretty lame. But yeah, he takes her to her house to give her somewhere to stay. She's scared because they might kill her for the Lochnar too. He goes to his room and he's like, oh, you can sleep on the couch. I'm just going to go to the room and jack it. So he's like trying to fall asleep, and then we hear some creaking. She goes to his room and she's like, Harry, can I sleep with you? And he's like, sure. And then she immediately just gets naked and she lies down a little bit with him. And she just starts going to town on it, and as kids we're like, yes. Like
Johnson, like a hungry hobo at the Del Mar racetrack.
Nice.
Yes.
That's poetry right there.
Hungry hobo jockey at the Del Mar racetrack. She's really going at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, was this like rotoscoped or something? Because, rotoscope is like it's like they shoot it for real and they just animate over it, So it's like,
I don't know.
Did they shoot people like a porno and they just drew over it or something like that?
I don't know, we gotta investigate that.
Yeah.
The people need to know.
Need to do deep research.
Need the truth here.
Deep research. Deep. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, we were really into this. Like, I remember seeing this at my friend's house, and we're like, okay, your mom's leaving? Okay, put it in. Like, like popped in the VHS, and we're like, ah.
Was this unrated, or what was it? Oh, the R rating? Because it's pretty pornographic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Erotic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was unrated.
Yeah.
Good times. Yeah. So he's like, I don't know what, and they do quite a few positions. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, I was showing the broad stars and stripes forever. And like, I guess she was supposed to be European, even though she doesn't have any accent. I don't know where the hell she's from.
Yeah, he was all nonchalant. He's just like, sleep over here, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
Get some coffee. I mean, he seemed totally uninterested. And then
Yeah.
Kiss him, like, all right. And
Yeah.
20 minutes later,
Yeah.
he's still showing her the stars and stripes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Very patriotic, the
he's a
guy.
champ. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess she was supposed to be European. I don't know, but she didn't really have any accent. Maybe she's like Dutch or Scandinavian or something, because they speak pretty good English without accents, you know. So he wakes up the next day, and the cops are like at his door, banging on his door, asking for the girl. Like, where's the girl? Or whatever. And he's like, what the fuck? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know where the fuck she is. So he goes to the cab, and that ugly kingpin guy is there. And they tell him to warn her next time he sees her. Like, we're on her ass. Better warn her ass. He starts driving, but then they start chasing him on these flying cars and stuff like that. This is like some shit like Elon would create. You know what I mean? Like, surprised he hasn't, actually. Um, and he goes to the top of the Statue of Liberty, like at the torch, in the torch of the Statue of Liberty, and he meets the girl there. And she has this contraption that opens up the Lochnar, and he's like, "That's it? Like that's what everyone's fighting over?" Um, yeah, and she's like, "Yeah, well, this has a lot of power in the universe and shit like that." And he's like, "Oh, well, whatever." And she asks him that.
He's very irritable.
Yeah, he is. Well, he's a New York cabbie.
Yep. Typical
Yeah.
disgruntled, angry, irritated cabbie.
Yeah, exactly. So she asks him to help her, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come along for 50%." And I guess that's what he wants, his share. And she's like, "You can have anything you want." Like, he's like, "Yeah, I'll take some more of that too."
Don't mind if I do.
So he takes her to the port and drops her off to meet with the fat, ugly kingpin guy. And she drops the Lochnar to him, and then she takes the money. And, the fat, ugly kingpin guy, he opens it, and he just melts. You know what I'm saying? It's like, good job. You just paid $50 million to just die right there. So she goes back in the car, and they drive off together, and there's this, like, happy music. And it's like, what the fuck? Why is this all happy? This is like cheesy, happy music. And Harry's like, okay, give me my share. And she says with a breathy voice, she's like, "I'm sorry, Harry, but I've got other plans." And she pulls out the gun, points it to the back of his head. It's like they almost kind of try to model her after like Marilyn Monroe with that voice, kind of. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The voice, the tits, but then he's like, "Oh, like I didn't want to have to do this to you, babe." He does the pedal laser ray, and he just takes her out. And I like that they show her in layers. Like it zaps her, and then it like undresses her, and then it kills her. I mean, I love that.
One last look before you go.
Yeah. One last.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Lochnar. So yeah, he melts her down, but we get a little show before she's totally gone. I'm sure he was like, "Damn, I wanted to keep banging that," but oh well. Sorry. That's the first of a few naked chicks in this. So yeah, this story is pretty cool. Like it was kind of like a neo noir ish, kind of Blade Runner ish, kind of. So that's kind of what I like about this movie. Like all the stories are like kind of like morality tales. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how it is. Like Creep Show or Tales from the Crypt. Like all these stories, yeah, they're like morality tales. And so the next story is Den. And so this is based on the character of the same name created by Richard Corbin. And Wikipedia says, a nerdy teenager finds a green meteorite near his house and adds it to his rock collection. During a lightning experiment, the orb hurls the young man into the world of Neverwhere, where he transforms into a naked, muscular man called Den, an acronym for his Earth name, David Ellis Norman.
These first two remind me of like Penthouse Forum. This is like nerdy guy, nothing going on in life, and hot, amazing chick. Suddenly it comes up and they fuck, and end of story. Yes.
Yeah.
The young kids Penthouse Forum was in an adult magazine that told, I showed artistic pictures of ladies, but also had these stories. I could see like George Lucas kind of a pimply George Lucas writing these stories when he was a kid, because it's like sci-fi, but it's also nerd guy. I don't know. That's
Yeah,
so.
yeah, for sure.
But
Um,
yeah, and John Candy again.
yeah. John Candy plays this character, and yeah, he gets transported to this, like, it reminds me of the Savage Land in X-Men. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
this, prehistoric kind of place.
yeah.
It's like Savage Land means Planet of the Apes, kind of. You know what I mean? Um, and so he's like the bald, like the Kazar guy from Savage Land, or like he's like a He-Man type of character, Um, and he's
Transform.
naked. Yeah, he's naked and bald, and he's like, "Ooh, no hair." And he's like, and then he like looks down. He's like, "Ooh, big."
Great dialogue.
um, yeah, and then it's funny. He's like, "First, I need some clothes." He's like, "There was no way I was gonna walk around this place with my dork hanging out." um, and we see them doing some sort of like Aztec like sacrifice or whatever. There's like pyramids and stuff, and the queen is topless there. Got some nice Tommy knockers.
Amazing.
Yeah, Stephen King would be proud. And yeah, they're sacrificing this other naked girl, and she's got some nice ones too. And they just throw her in the water, but then Dan is around, and he's like, "Oh, let me jump in," and he just jumps in and saves her. And he can like breathe underwater. Basically, he's just like a superhuman. He saves her, and he tells her that he's from Earth, and she's from Earth too, so they have that in common. Uh, she's British. Somehow she got transported there, and he's like, "Yeah, well, I got transported here too." And she said she doesn't have any money, but if any part of her pleases him, she'd give it to him willingly. So she says, and he's like, "Oh, okay." And then, yeah, they start getting it on. She has this nice little like twig thong, like, yeah, that's the only thing she's wearing, and he's just like, "Okay, I'll take this off." Maybe, yeah, like, I don't know if it made that much of a difference. So yeah, they're about to get it on, but then some big blue creature guy steps in and tells them that to come, and
To
they're
come
not. Yeah, 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 not the coming they were trying to do. Yeah. um, and yeah, so they're like almost at this, like, it's like a Planet of the Apes type dude, and they take them to some castle, and they take him to this guy Ard, and I guess he's the supreme leader of the revolution. It's funny how they made him, like, he seems gay, like he seems, he's skinny and short and like, erudite, I guess,
Yes.
um, yeah, he tells the guards to attack him, and then he starts beating their asses. He's just like, smashing their heads in, and he's like, "All right, this guy can fight," or whatever. He takes the gun from one of those guys and he shoots Ard, but Ard can like regenerate his body. So it's like, okay, well, I guess this guy is pretty powerful in that sense. And so he's like, "Okay, yeah, you can fight." So he's like, "I want to hire you to steal the Lochnar for me." And he's like, "Okay, if I refuse," and he's like, "Well, then that chick dies." So he's like, "Okay, well, I guess I'll go through with it.
All right.
I wanted to bang her at least once, so I'll go through with it." Um, so
Way to send her.
Ard, yeah, Ard calls Norrell, who's one of his ape henchmen, and he leads them to where he needs to go. So they like invade this compound of the queen, like where she was having that sacrifice, and they enter her room, and he sees the Lochnar there in the corner, but it's like in the dark, so he doesn't know what he's doing. So he walks in and just grabs it, and he's like, "Whoa, this feels different." And then they turn on the lights, and he's grabbing her titties, just handfuls of it. She's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I thought this was the orb." He's like, "You got some big orbs too." Yeah, and it's funny because they turn on the lights and like the apes are laughing. The apes are like, they're like laughing at the situation. you know. Yeah, and she tells them to kill him, and they're about to kill him, but then she's like, "Oh no, wait, I have a better idea." And she grabs his hand, and the henchmen, the ape henchmen, are like, "Not again," you know. And she says, "If you please me, I may let you live." So then he just lays down the pipe, dude. He just he just gets it on big time or whatever. Yeah. Yes. Keep doing that. Yeah. And then yeah, this must have been a pretty good bone because she tells him like, "Oh, like you're so good at that, you can bring peace to the world through this." Like you can bring peace to my land from this. Um, but then her guards come in and they tell her, "Oh, the Lochnar has been stolen," and then she's like, "Piask." She's like, "Oh, you seduced me to distract me from the Lochnar." It's like, "Now we must kill you," and so but then he runs out, and her guards like she tells them, "Get the flyers ready," and so they ride on these like giant dragonfly things, trying to chase him while he's on his like pterodactyl thing or whatever the hell. Um, and they go to the other guy's compound, the Ard guy, and he's doing a sacrifice with Catherine there. And he's like, "What the fuck?" He's like, and the Lochnar is there, and he just throws Catherine into the lava. But then Den comes out and saves her. I mean, I don't know how the whole thing really works out. Maybe the whole thing is just a fantasy in his head because none of the shit made any fucking sense at all. He can do this, he can do that. Lava doesn't burn him, doesn't kill her or whatever. Then the queen shows up and she's like, "Give me my Lochnar." And, he's like, "You stupid bitch, it's my Lochnar." Like they're fighting over it, him and her. And then here's another thing that makes no sense. Like Den makes a spear or something, and he chucks it at the pyramid, and then the Lochnar like activates it, and the queen and the gay guy and the apes all vanish, like just from him throwing a spear. Like how the hell does that happen? And yeah, he just saves the world just by throwing that spear, and he and her just ride off into the sunset on the little pterodactyl. And I remember at the time, me and my friend was like, "Oh, like he should have ridden behind her." You know what I'm saying? Like just to get some action on the way. Instead, he's in front of her leading the way. Like a motorcycle style. But it was like she should have been in the front and him behind her.
Like Rudolph, headlights could have led the way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's that story of Den. And then it kind of goes into this other little weird story. This is like one of the shorter stories called Captain Stern, double N, Captain Stern, based on the character of the same name created by Bernie Wrightson. So it says, on the space station, crooked space captain Lincoln F. Stern is on trial for numerous serious charges presented by the prosecutor, consisting of, he says it's all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, can't even repeat some of it here.
Preschool prostitution ring.
Yeah, yeah, that's fucking
drugs,
crazy.
Dressed up like a nun.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy.
There was like 500 charges against him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
long ass list.
Yeah, and he pleads not guilty to all of them. Um, yeah, this Lincoln F. Stern. He looks like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Like I feel like they must have taken that. I mean, Gaston came after. Like they must have taken that design from this Lincoln F. Stern, like the jawline, the huge, handsome white guy jawline that he has. Yeah, and this whole trial thing it reminds you of Pink Floyd The Wall, like the cartoon imagery from that. Like even the walls are white of the thing, and they must have stolen from that. So like, the wall, the animation. Well, I mean, the album The Wall, Pink Floyd came out '79, so I feel like when they were making this, they probably saw that and were like, "Oh, let's throw in some white walls here." Just and then there's a trial in The Wall. If you listen to the whole thing, one of the last tracks is the character Pink. He's on trial, so it's like they must have stolen some shit there. Um, Pink Floyd The Wall, great album. And that actually, to me, I consider that the last classic rock album. It came out '79, which I consider the last year of classic rock. 80s became hair metal and shit, so that's not classic rock. It's it's old, but it's not classic rock. It had to, like 79 is the cutoff of classic rock to me. You know what I'm saying? Like grunge is something else. Even though grunge is old now, that's not classic rock. You know what I'm saying? Like
No.
Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Some people might say that, but yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. But it really is. It really shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? Like the 70s, that was the cutoff. 79, and then Pink Floyd, The Wall, that came out like December 79. So it just made the cutoff. So that really, to me, is the last classic rock album. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So this reminds me a lot of that. Yeah, he has some guy. They're like, oh, can we please call to the stand Hanover Fist? Yeah, like all the names are cheesy like that, Yeah, and so there's this nerdy looking guy takes the stand, and he found the Lochnar, and he has it's like a little ball at this point, and he's lying on the stand for Stern. He's like, oh, he's a great guy, he's the best or whatever. But then the Lochnar is like making him tell the truth. And yeah, he says some pretty racy shit, like the shit you were saying. This preschool prostitution ring or whatever. Like, yeah, he says some crazy shit, and he's like looking around, like, hey, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then the guy, he just starts turning into some like Hulk type of creature, or like this abomination from Hulk. You know what I'm saying? He turns into this big, crazy guy.
A white Solomon Grundy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he says he wants to kill Stern. He's like, I want to kill Stern. And he starts going crazy, and he starts chasing Stern around. He just breaks through the whole shit, and the whole the crowd of the trials freaking out, and he starts destroying the ship. It's just you can like feel the metal when he pounds it.
Great monster.
And
great music.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a really good sequence. Yeah, I like that. And he has him cornered in this one part. Lincoln F. Stern is like running away from him, but he has him cornered. And you figure, okay, what the hell is Lincoln F. Stern gonna do now? But then Stern kind of calms down, and he starts taking out all this money, and he counts it out, and he's like, okay, here you go, Hanover. Here's your share. So the whole thing was like a distraction to get him out of there. You know what I'm saying? And he gives him the money, and he's like, thank you. And he turns into like a runt again. He's not the big crazy guy again.
Nerdy weak guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so he gave him the money, but then he's like, oh, like, see you later, Hanover. He pulls some like trapdoor, and the guy falls out of the spaceship, and yeah, he's screwed. And yeah, it's pretty cool little funny scene. I mean, it's probably the weakest story of the whole thing, but it's still kind of cool, it works really well with the music, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we see that his hand was like holding some money as it falls like through space, and then we go to the next story, which is like another short story, but I actually really like it. It's called Neverwhere Land. So the story follows the influence. Oh wait, no. No. Okay, there was gonna be a part called Neverwhere Land here, but because of time constraints, they cut it out, and it would have connected this Captain Stern part to the next part of the warship, but it was cut out, I guess, due to time constraints. But they have it on the Blu-ray of it, so if you want to see that.
It seemed like there was a gap there from one story to the other. It was
quite a
jump from one to the other.
Right, yeah. So this thing here would have connected the two, but they decided for time constraints to not have that in. But you can see it in the extra features or whatever. So this next little vignette, I actually really like this, even though it's pretty short. I think it's pretty cool. So this part we see like an old school fighter jet plane flying in the sky, and it's like shooting out at the enemy, and it looks like World War II, like based on their their uniforms and stuff. And the guys fighting in there get shot and killed on the plane in the back. except the pilots, are still alive, but the plane is like going down, kind of, and the co-pilot was like, "Hey, let me go to the back and check on these dead dudes or whatever." So he goes back there and he sees all these dead dudes laying around, and I like this part because it's kind of more horror, like it's more like grounded horror to me. Like it's not like aliens or it's not like some space fantasy crap. This is like more straight horror, so I kind of like this part.
This is real, you dig?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So this part also reminds me of that Amazing Stories episode. Do you remember that? With like Kiefer Sutherland and what was that guy? The guy from 3 O'clock High. He was like the main guy in it. Casey Shamasco or whatever. Um, so it was like, oh yeah, it was like almost like the whole Young Guns cast were in this like short of Amazing Stories. And I remember seeing that as a kid, and I was like, oh shit, like this is kind of crazy. So yeah, you probably remember this. When I tell you what it is, you'll probably remember. So there was an Amazing Stories episode, or because it was a movie, right? It was a movie, but then they made a show out of it or some shit like that. Yeah, it was kind of before my time, but I caught up with it a bit later. So there was an episode where these guys were in World War II, and they were, fighting, some Germans or something like that, and they won this air fight. But then the wing, like the wheels of the plane, got like shot off or whatever, so they couldn't land. And they're like, okay, well, we'll try to land, but there's the dude in the bottom. He was like the guy shooting out of the bottom, and he's like in this glass thing at the bottom of the plane or whatever. Do you remember that or no?
No, but I'm entertained by it.
Yeah. So he was in this glass part, and yeah, no, try to watch it. Try to find it. He was in this glass part, and then, but he was good at drawing. That was like his thing. He would always draw stuff for the guys and stuff like that. Um, so the thing was about to land, and they're like, "Hey, dude, okay, we're gonna land. Sorry, And he was like stuck. They couldn't get him out. Like he was in there, and it got jammed, like the door on top of him. So he was stuck in this little like bubble at the bottom. And so the thing was about to land, but he drew a plane. He drew the plane. He drew the plane, and he drew like wheels on it or whatever. So then when it was time to land, all of a sudden had these big like Disney wheels. It lands and it has like these big yellow Disney type of wheels or whatever. And everyone's like, "Oh my god, like so cool." Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I mean, maybe it's kind of cheesy if you look back now, but I remember as a kid, I thought it was kind of cool. So like,
got smashed up and horribly died underneath the weight of the vehicle. Yeah.
yeah,
No.
yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe that's what really happened, and this was just a fantasy happy ending. You know what I'm saying? Like could be maybe in the
Maybe it was his death scene or whatever. Death sequence.
yeah,
He was already
right.
dead.
Amazing Faces of Death. So, anyways, yeah, this story kind of reminds you of that, but this is like a much darker take. You know what I'm saying? Like that was like the happy ending. This is like the scary ending, kind of. So, yeah, he goes back there, sees all these dead guys, and the guy, he also sees the Lochnar in the sky. Like he sees it like outside the plane, like that, like that. There's something on the wing. Twilight Zone, yeah. Twilight Zone, yeah. So like, yeah, there's something on the wing. Like it's kind of like that, like orb. Yeah, you see the orb on the side, and he tells him, he's like, "Hey, like I'm seeing some shit on the side or whatever." He's like, "Okay, like, hey, what's her name?" Yeah. So yeah, it reminds me of like a lot of that Twilight Zone, a lot of that Twilight Zone sequence. Yeah. So because you can see the Lochnar on the side. It's glowing on the side of the plane. Um, and the lock, it enters the ship. It can like pass through shit. It's not like solid or whatever. It's like a ghost, so it enters the ship and kind of lights up the dead bodies. Like all of a sudden, the body on the ground, it like turns green and big. It's like it looks like fucking what's his name, like Stephen King in Creepshow, like when he gets all like hairy and shit. Yeah, his yeah, yeah, exactly. So the body turns like that, but the guy doesn't see it. yeah, like, and then so that the co-pilot is Holden, um, and he's on his way back to the front to the cockpit, but and then one of the dead zombie guys just comes up and attacks him, and the pilot hears that, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And he walks back, and he sees Holden is a skeleton zombie, and he's trying to attack him. He's like, "Oh shit!" And yeah, they're like they became these like zombies, and they're kind of like skeleton zombies, but they have like super strength. I don't know how that works, but I guess once you become a zombie, you can get stronger. I guess is that part of the rules of it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Lognar's
that's true.
involved. Anything is possible.
And yeah, so like the zombies like descend on him on the main pilot or whatever, but then he thinks he's slick. He thinks he's like James Bond. He's like, all right. He's like, fuck you guys. So he slips out of the emergency exit at the bottom. He's like, fuck you guys. He's like, falling down with the parachute. He's like, yeah. He's like, the perfect getaway. Yeah. So he's fallen through the air. And he lands on a nearby island. Like he's like, oh, just my luck. He's like, here's land. And he lands there, takes out his parachute, and he kind of looks around, and he's like, okay, what do we have here? And he looks through some shrubbery, some trees, and he sees like all these downed warplanes there. There's like all these, downed warplanes from the past, like, I guess 30 years, you know what I'm saying? Like, because if this is World War II, they only started having planes, like, when did planes get invented? Like 1903 or something like that? But they used planes in the First World War, right? Like in 1911 or whatever. Yeah, so that's like 30 years of warplanes there. And he's like, what the fuck? He's like, that's crazy. And he starts walking around, and then you see like dudes lurking, kind of, like, yeah, they start lurking, and then they start attacking his ass. They come out of the woodwork, and he's like, ah! Yeah, and then we see him. He's like on like a predator vision. You know what I'm saying? It's like a heat seeking thing. And this was before Predator, so that's kind of interesting that they have that. And it's like some alien technology, like keeping track of that. And then we see them looking at the Pentagon. And this is like a segue to another story. So there's this creepy guy named Dr. Anrak, and he's walking in, and all these journalists are asking him questions, and they're like, oh, are there aliens or whatever and stuff, and he says humans are the only advanced civilization in the universe. And then we see this like hot like secretary there, taking notes. And so while they're at the Pentagon, they're having some big meeting, and then this like huge spaceship hovers over it, and it's like this cool, smiley Japanese spaceship. It looks like, it looks like a Hello Kitty character. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't look like your typical spaceship. Yeah, and it hovers over the Pentagon, and then the doctor starts going crazy, and he sees the Lochnar on the secretary's necklace. It's like, it's like a little one, and it's like on her necklace, and he starts going crazy and jumps on her and stuff like that. He like motorboats her basically, and yeah, the spaceship, it sticks out like this big straw, comes out of the bottom and, sticks into the Pentagon, and it sucks out the doctor and the secretary too, up into it. And she gets sucked into one area, and they're like, okay, she's hot, let's put her somewhere else. And then the the lame doctor gets sucked up, but he's like broken in a million pieces. And it's funny because the alien robot, it's like, what am I gonna do with this guy? He's fucked. and that's John Candy again, playing the little alien robot guy. So he does, yeah. In animated
Candy
form.
gets a lot of action in this movie.
So we see, yeah, he goes with like the hot secretary chick, and then we see these two other slacker aliens just kind of hanging out there, and he's like, hey, come with me, the robot John Candy, and she's like, oh, like my gynecologist appointment is on Wednesday, and he's like, well, we'll have to rearrange that. And so the other guys, they're just like flying the spaceship and and one of those guys, yeah, that's Harold Ramis does the voice of one of those guys, because he's like, hey, you got any more of that sodium benzoate or something like that. And they're like, yeah. And so they lay out. They have this big ass like Zamboni, just lays out all this cocaine basically, in the spaceship, and then they like turn up the music, and you can just imagine the sound system on that. That would be the shit. Um, they turn up the music, and then they're like, all right, nosedive, and so they're like, they develop these like snouts or whatever, and they just start snorting up all the cocaine there. It's pretty awesome. And then they just like zone out. They're just like tripping, looking out on the universe. They can see the Milky Way like ahead of them. They're like, yo, man, it's cool. Yeah, good times. And yeah, like this was totally made for you to get stoned to it. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the whole point of this. And it's a beautiful thing. And then we cut to the robot and the hot secretary. She's naked on the bed with the robot, and she's smoking a cigarette, and yeah, we can just assume the robot just banged her, and yeah, and he wants to marry her. He's like, I want to marry you, or whatever, and she's like, oh, I don't know about that. She's like, I'm afraid I'll come home and find you screwing the toaster. And then she says, okay, I'll marry you, but I want a Jewish wedding. And he's like, Jewish wedding? Ooh, like, okay. And yeah, it's kind of funny. And we see it, like you can see parts of the ship and stuff, and it says like Martians are people too, like it shows that on the thing. Yeah, and so that was that story. And then the next story is Tarna. It's an original story by Daniel Goldberg and Len Blum, based on Arzak by Mobius, so another Mobius piece. So Wikipedia says the Lochnar, now the size of a giant meteor, crashes into a volcano on another world and draws a large mass of curious people. As they begin to climb the volcano, it erupts and green slime covers the crowd, mutating them into an evil barbarian army. The mutants subsequently attack a nearby city of peaceful scholars. Desperate, the city leaders mentally summon the Tarkanians, yeah, a once powerful yet now declining warrior race with whom the city had a pact. But the city falls before the call can be answered. And yeah, we see, the Lochnar is like some big volcano on some planet, and it explodes, and all these guys turn into like war demon zombies, and they take over the land through war. So this part reminds me of, there's this really good video by Pearl Jam for their song "Do the Evolution," and the video is really cool. I feel like it was very inspired by heavy metal, because it has a lot, like in the video, in the Pearl Jam video, it's actually done by Todd McFarlane. I know you're a big Todd McFarlane guy, right? Did your favorite Spider-Man back in the day?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
He's awesome. Man ever.
Oh yeah, was that in Boston or what?
Got to hang out with him for 30 seconds.
Oh, cool.
Oh, I was up in LA, Comic-Con. Can you please sign this? Can you also please sign this?
Well, I mean, he was a pretty nerdy guy, so I think he could empathize with you. Yeah, he's rich. Yeah, no, there's actually a really good interview with him. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. It's with him and the guy Noah something is his name. But yeah, Google Todd McFarlane interview with Noah, and it's a really good interview. And he lays out, he's like, these are the things you can do to get success. And he's like, it's really simple. He's like, it's really fucking simple. He's like, you know what I did? He's like, people always say, oh, you drew the best fucking Spider-Man. You drew the best Spider-Man. He's like, you know why I drew the best Spider-Man? He's like, because I actually tried. He's like, you guys just half-assed it. That's why it looks like shit. He's like, all you have to do is make it look sexy. He's like, I drew the same Spider-Man, but I made the webbing look a little sexier, and everyone says I'm a genius. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's like, that's the thing. Just make it look sexier. He's like, I got into the toy making business because all these other toys look like shit. And then people are giving me awards like, "Oh, you make such great toys." And he's like, "Yeah, you know why I make great toys?" He's like, "Because I actually try to make the toy look like the character." He's like, "You guys don't fucking do that." He's like, "That's why I make such good toys, because I actually try to do a good job with it, you know." So, watch that interview. It's really good. Yeah,
You ever see
they're fucking horrible.
You ever see the comic toys
Yeah,
back from the 70s and 80s? The
yeah.
same. They were all like Barbies, but then they'd have like a
It was the
blue
same
suit for
fucking
Fantastic
template. They
Four.
just like put a different
Spider-Man would
coloring
have a
on each
Spider-Man
different
suit.
one.
Horrible.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, yeah,
yeah, you're totally
he's
right about
great.
that.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
So he animated and directed the "Do the Evolution" video by Pearl Jam, and you can see when I see this, it reminds me a lot of heavy metal. And that video was so good, they actually made like a book out of it. They made like do like behind the scenes of "Do the Evolution." They actually have like a coffee table book on it. It's really good. Yeah, so especially this sequence reminds me a lot of that "Do the Evolution" video, and so yeah, like these demon warriors take over this whole land, and the scholars try to summon Tarna, but she doesn't come in time. And so after they take over the land, we see this character flying on this pterodactyl-like creature, flying through the sky, and there's all this like sludge and shit throughout the land and stuff like that, and then this person lands, and they take off the big cloak that they're wearing, and it's just this chick with huge tits underneath this cloak. Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, there's
Thank
still
you.
too much horror and
Get
crap.
back to that.
Need more nudity. Yeah, and she's just stacked. Like, and I mean, this character, this Tarna character, she is like the biggest icon of the film, I would say. She's on the poster with her white hair and banging body, and yeah, like I wish I saw more chicks at Comic-Con dressed like this, or not dressed like this. You know what I'm saying?
I would say the same thing today.
Yeah, yeah, the chicks, yeah.
Play heavy metal people at
Yeah,
Comic Cons.
and so yeah, you can see that. Yeah, there's like the green sludge. This part almost reminds me of like the Lorax, if there was a chick with white hair and big tits. You know, just like Dr. Susan Lorax. So yeah, she goes into this club, and it's kind of funny. We see some like nerdy new wave band playing, and yeah, they kind of look partly Devo-ish, kind of, and this club, it reminds me of Total Recall, when he's on Mars and he goes to the bar and he meets the chick with three tits, yeah, so she goes there, and the whole thing is like she's like mute or whatever, like she doesn't talk. She lets her sword do the talking, and yeah, like she's gonna save her people, or save the people of this land, and she she's determined to avenge them. So she begins following the trail of their murderers and encounters a small band of the mutant barbarians. And after killing them, and with more information at hand, she travels towards the mutant camp. But she and her mount are captured, and Tarna is tortured and thrown into an open pit, unconscious. Yep, naked. Yeah, yeah, they whipped
Look
her.
at sneaking through. They whipped her
Yeah,
with the. It's like skillfully
yeah,
done.
exactly. Yeah.
Not to
They're
tarnish
like,
any
okay,
of the
they're like, we won't
important
hurt those. Those are
areas.
masterpieces. We'll go around it. It's like a pitcher. They'll pitch around Aaron Judge. They won't. They won't fuck with him. Like that. They were like, okay, those are perfect. We need to whip around them. Yeah. So her mount escapes and rescues her when she's about to be thrown into the pit. And so she tries going for the Lochnar, but the mutants pursue and shoot her mount down. And the mutant leader faces Tarna in a duel to the death, wounding her, but Tarna manages to kick his ass. Thank God. With the last of their strength, Tarna and her companion make a death flight to the volcano, and As they approach, the Lochnar warns her off, claiming that sacrificing herself would be futile. Ignoring the Lochnar, Tarna unleashes the power imbued in her sword and dives into the volcano, destroying the Lochnar. Like the Lochnar was trying to you know, trying to fool her into thinking that he couldn't be destroyed, but she does manage to destroy it. And yeah, that's kind of the end of that story, and we see the Lochnar there talking with the girl again, and he's like, well, so that's my life, like that's what I'm all about, and the little girl's like, okay, like, thanks for telling me 5 stories of nudity, violence, and horror, and thanks for killing my dad right before my very eyes, like, thank you. But then the girl flees, and the Lochnar then explodes, destroying the house in the process, and Tarna is reborn, and her mount appears outside, and the girl flies happily away on it. And so, like Tarna's soul has been reincarnated into the girl, so she's a new Terrakian, and yeah, I guess that's why she's so iconic, and she's on the cover, she's on the poster, and that kind of ends the movie, and then we hear the Devo track at the end, which I know you loved. Yeah, Devo is great live, right?
Awesome song.
You got to see Devo live, right? Yeah, I've seen him a couple times.
Amazing.
And that's the irony, is you're the 80s guy,
someday.
but I've seen Devo like 2 or 3 times. Yeah, I got lucky. They played at festivals that I went to. And yeah, I mean, heavy metal, it's a trip. How'd you feel watching it back? I'm sure you hadn't seen it in a long ass time.
Yeah, 30 years. I don't know. It's.
I'm sure you did.
I really enjoyed it.
I'm sure. I'm sure
Lots
there
of
are
screensavers on my phone now. It definitely felt like going back to the 80s ish area. Like the MTV thing and the music in the background, and like you said, the style that they have to the anime. Very nicely done how everything was put together. So
yeah,
everything was put together very
well.
well.
What'd you think of the animation? Has it aged good enough, or does it look cheesy now to you? Or no, I like it a lot too, and that's what sucks about animation now. Everything now is CGI 3D animation. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to do some 2D shit like this because it's too hard to work. But that's what made this shit great. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, so they did do rotoscoping, like for a lot of it, like at least mainly for the mainly for the naked girls. Yeah, like I was watching the making of, and so like Tarna, like when she's like getting undressed, it was like a model chick that they found, and they recorded her, and then they drew over her. That's why the movements are so fluid. Also with the cabbie guy.
My favorite montage.
Yeah.
My favorite montage, the 5-minute scene.
Yeah.
Getting dressed and going slowly all around.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so on the making of, they show that. They're like, okay, here's the naked chick that we filmed. You see that whole thing, and they're like, okay, now here's where we drew over the naked chick, so you get to see that whole thing, just everything there. I mean, she looks, she looks pretty. She's pretty anatomically correct, my friend. The only thing she doesn't have is the white hair. I mean, she's blonde hair. But. I'm sure it can.
It can be arranged.
Yeah, no, really cool movie. It's a real trip, and I don't know if younger generations are finding this film. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it's trickling down to them. Because I almost feel like if this was on Netflix, it would be kind of controversial. Like kids finding this, but it was on Tubi, and kids are watching that too. Thinking about it. Yeah, for sure. That like this movie is the equivalent of
too.
What's that group? Sleep or whatever. They did an album like Dope Smoker or something like that. They it's like stoner rock animated. You know what I mean? That's like exactly what this was made for. You know?
They should
Yeah,
put
no,
this
they
movie
should.
on. You
Yeah,
go to the planetarium and they have like the laser shows and shit. They should put it on a planetarium with the full soundtrack, the good stereo,
yeah, for
and
sure.
it. Smoke a little weed before you go. And I'm not endorsing it, but hey, it might enhance the experience.
That would be cool. You would
Um,
you would
that
hop on
would be so cool if they did
that.
something like that. I don't know if they movie IMAX.
Yeah, Ruben H. Fleet.
Bring it to the
Yeah. That
Balboa.
would
What
be
is it
awesome.
called? The San.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, bring
I
it
would be
there.
first in line for that.
The kids will love it.
And they're like, "Here you go. Here's your bag. Here's your edibles." Before as you walk in. Yeah, thinking about this movie, it almost reminds me of like a movie that the kids from Fast Time at Ridgemont High would have been watching. You know what I'm saying? I could see like Spicoli's like, "Let's go watch heavy metal, bro." Like, like, and it's like from the same time frame, pretty much. Um, yeah, great film. Exactly.
It's got tales of
Yeah,
morality.
this is the type of Bible thumping
you
film you need to be watching. Yeah, well, that was Heavy Metal, a great film. Like I said, check out some of the early French stuff that they did in the magazines. Pretty dope. Follow them on IG on their Heavy Metal Instagram. They post dope shit. They post a lot of sci-fi artist stuff and a lot of their classic cover art and stuff, and Google search a lot of their covers, their classic covers. They're dope. I love seeing those. They're really sick. I get a lot of inspiration from heavy metal, the film, the magazine, the artists, who are part of it, like Mobius and Jodorowsky, and yeah. So thanks for listening to Heavy Metal on Briterion Bollection today. Hope you enjoyed it. Listen to us on Spotify. Follow us on YouTube, and we'll keep the Briterion movement going. We want you to join the Briterion Bollect gang. So, holla at your boys. So, I'm Kevin. This is Kris. We'll see you next time. Peace out. Bye.
Peace out.